Hi! We've got a number of videos out there on YouTube that pose a question like this. Here's a melody, name the key. I wonder what you make of this one. And if you want to, you could kind of pause for a moment, have a look through and consider the matter, then come back and join me. Otherwise, just stick with me, that's absolutely fine. So here we've got accidentals appearing in a melody, but we haven't got a key signature, and we're trying to work out what we're dealing with. Now, the first thing you might notice about this, if you're trying to name the key, is that we've got a bit of a mixture of accidentals, because we've got a sharp, we've got quite a lot of flats, and then we've got that natural sign, which in a way we don't need because it's what we call a cautionary accidental, so sort of thrown in when a composer might think there's a risk of a performer misreading the note. That in itself is a little bit of a clue, which we'll come to. But the fact that there's a mixture of flats and sharps is telling us that we're in a minor key. So start thinking minor rather than major. This situation is also a clue, because why would we have F sharp in one place and then just a few notes later, just 2 notes later in this case, F natural? It's because when we're in a minor key, remember, in a harmonic minor scale, the 7th note is raised. In a melodic minor scale, the 6th and the 7th notes are raised when the scale goes up, and they are not raised when the scale comes down. They just follow the key signature. So in a melody that's likely to be using some melodic minor along the way, there may just be a hint of these notes at the top of the scale being a little bit of a mixture of things. And there's your classic example. An F sharp there, followed a couple of notes later by an F natural. It's most likely, not universally the case, but it's most likely that this will be something to do with the 7th degree of the scale. So if we're looking at F sharp, F natural, one thing you might want to consider is, well, if that's the 7th degree of the scale, we might be in the key of G minor, because G is the 8th degree of the scale, or the 1st degree of the scale up the octave, whichever way you like to look at it. So could this piece of music be in the key of G minor? Well, if we're in the key of G minor, we need to know our key signatures here, don't we? But if we do know our key signatures, then we'll know that G minor has got 2 flats. It's related to B flat major, and the 2 flats are B flat and E flat. So let's have a look at that sort of possibility. Well, there's a B flat there, there's another B flat there, there's an E flat there. So yeah, maybe we're thinking about G minor. If we are in G minor, it sort of confirms why we might have the F sharp and F natural. So just looking at the opening of this, we seem to be moving in the direction of thinking we're in the key of G minor. See if there are any other clues. Sometimes looking at the first note is helpful because it might start on the tonic, the 1st degree of the scale, but it doesn't always do that. This one doesn't. If it starts on B flat, well, I mean, you could be forgiven for thinking you've seen a couple of flats, so therefore it's in B flat major, but it's not in B flat major because we've talked about the F sharp. However, look at these first 2 bars. Look at the notes that you've got. We start on B flat, we come down to G, then we go to D, back to G, back to B flat. So those notes spell out the tonic chord in G minor, chord 1, G, B flat, D. So even though it's a melody, there's a kind of implication for the harmony. The opening melody notes are these, the first 2 bars. So if I've got those 3 notes, there's my chord of G minor, G, B flat and D, and all these notes would fit it. So that's helping us to see that the melody has an implication for the harmony, and the harmony is shouting chord 1 in G minor at us. So that's a really firm bit of validation of this notion of G minor. Then we get to the next bar, we see the F sharp, and we see G just before it, G just after it, and then we see F natural, and we think, yeah, we've got it cracked. We don't need to look at anything else because we're in the key of G minor. Well, that holds water until this point in the piece, but I've purposely thrown in an extra challenge. I wonder how many people managed to see this earlier in the video. We start in the key of G minor. The question is, does the melody stay in G minor? Because one possibility is that the melody might stay in G minor, another is that it might modulate, it might move to another key. Oh my goodness. Well, let's have a look and see if we think that could possibly have happened. Well, E flat, that belongs to G minor, doesn't it? So there's nothing too worrying about that. When we come down here though, you might start to be troubled by the time you get to this bar. Why are we looking at B natural? Two B naturals in that bar, aren't there? And if we were in the key of G minor, well, in the key signature, we have B flat, and B flat's the third degree of the scale. So it's not the sixth or the seventh, those notes that like to get changed in a melodic minor scale. It's the third degree of the scale. So why on earth would I be looking at B naturals if I was in the key of G minor? The simple answer is you won't be. Unless something untoward has happened, like we've modulated to another key. Now, interestingly, we've still got E flat. So if we've got G minor with two flats, the first flat is B flat, the second flat is E flat. We're now in a curious situation by the end of this, aren't we? Where we can see E flat, but we can't see B flat. And in fact, when we see B, it's not B flat at all, it's B natural. How could that be? Well, if B flat's the first flat and E flat's the second flat, we've got the second flat, but we haven't got the first flat. That means we have to be in a minor key, but we can't be in G minor. So we must have modulated to another minor key. Now, why would I not have the B flat, the first flat, but I would have the second flat, the E flat? Possibly because the first flat, the B flat, is the note that's been changed. Now, if you take a B flat and you raise it by a semitone, it becomes B natural. And that's what you would expect to happen at the top of a melodic minor scale or the top of a harmonic scale. So could it be that in fact B started life being flat, but it's been raised? So we've now got B natural. Okay, that could be telling us that in fact that B natural is the seventh degree of a minor scale. So if it's the seventh degree of a minor scale, what would be the minor scale? It would be C minor. Let's have a think about C minor. Interesting, the melody finishes on a C. So if it is C minor, it's gone home to the tonic. It's kind of reinforced here because there's another C here. So we kind of go C, then we go 3, 2, 1 to kind of confirm the C again. So C minor's looking like a distinct possibility, isn't it? But let's just check it out because C minor's got three flats, hasn't it? B flat, E flat and A flat. We're happy that we've got E flat. We're happy that the B flat might have been changed to a B natural. What about the A flat? And in fact here we've got A natural. So what's that A natural doing there? Well, remember A flat is the sixth degree in the scale of C minor. If it's been raised, because we're using melodic minor, then that A flat is going to be raised by a semitone to A natural. Aha! So could it be that this is a raised sixth in C minor? The answer is yes, it is. And another thing is, you wouldn't really want to write a B natural followed by an A flat followed by a B natural, because it would give us a melodic interval of an augmented second, which sounds a bit odd. You know, when I play the top of a harmonic minor scale that comes down B natural, A flat, can you hear the problem? It's got a certain kind of oriental feel to it. So we tend not to make that interval happen, which is one reason why we use the melodic minor. So having used the B natural, then we also have A natural. So this is the seventh and the sixth degree of the scale being raised. So we have a melody that begins in G minor, modulates at the midway point, and ends up in C minor. Now I wonder if you can kind of hear that when I play the melody. So here's G minor. This is how the melody goes. Now, can you hear that change of key halfway through when you suddenly think, oh, the ground's just slipped from underneath me a bit. It's a kind of smooth transition from one key to another, but we've actually moved, haven't we? You might hear it more plainly if I put some chords in with this. So there's G minor at the beginning, here's C minor at the end. So G minor might go something like this. Now listen to the modulation. And there we are in C minor at the end. So I hope that's given you some useful practice in spotting keys and spotting modulation.